welcome to this episode of FinTech Focus TV, today powered by Glue42 and Velox. It's an absolute pleasure to be hosting this today. I've been very excited about this for some time now. We have an all-star panel, one who are, in my mind, at the absolute cutting edge of what I think is one of the most interesting areas at the moment of the financial market situation. Platform modernization using data-centric, low-code and desktop integration technologies. I'm hosting many episodes over the last year of FinTech Focus TV. And over that period, we've seen more and more conversation, more and more conflab around both the low-code movement, as I'd like to term it, and desktop integration, desktop interop, everything around that. Over the course of the last year, I've had many conversations with both Velox and Glue42, and they are without doubt some of the most innovative and forward-thinking companies who are in this space and have been for some time. Today, this panel is one of some esteem. Delighted to introduce them to you at the moment. We have Reena Raichura, the Head of Product Solutions for Glue42. Reena, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me here.
Lovely to have you on board. John Butler, the CEO of Velox. John, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you doing, Toby?
Very good. Very good indeed. I'll go with whatever name you want to today.
Yeah, exactly.
And Steve Grob, the founder of Vision 57, my confidant and side partner in all of these ventures. It's great to have you on the show as well. How are you, Steve?
All good, thanks. Toby here, yeah.
So look, three...
Danger Mouse and Penfold.
Well, it's a step up from the Ant and Dec we got last time from you, John.
Yeah.
So this is an area that we've been talking about for some time, and I'm so pleased to be involved in putting this together and being able to have this conversation. We've got plenty to talk through. For all those of you who are watching at the moment, there is a Q&A function. Please don't hesitate to put your questions through as they come up. I've been reliably informed that both Reena and John and Steve are all very happy to answer whatever questions you throw their way. And I'm sure there's going to be some of distinction as they come through as well. So we've got plenty before we get into the Q&A section to be going on with as well. And I'm going to start by share here and bring us all into screen. Let's start by talking a little bit now about platform modernization itself. Steve, I'm going to start with you. What platforms actually need to be modernized and why?
The short answer to that is all of them. But to give you a sort of perhaps a more detailed answer, when I was at Fidessa, we spent 15 years. Our absolute focus was on workflow automation because that made you more efficient. And whilst that's still a very central theme in our industry, there's two others that have really come into play that make firms like Glue42 and Velox absolutely front and center of what's going on at the minute. And the first of these is this idea of strategic agility. Gartner refers to it as the composable enterprise. The sort of short version is that firms now want to get away from having a sort of vertical tech stack and get something that's much more modular so that they can swap new modules in and out at will, compose, recompose. And that way they can respond and take advantage of the customer dynamics that are happening out there. And then the second new theme that's very clear now is this idea of data centricity. It's a bit of a mouthful, but basically what it means is making sure that data is driving all of your decisions. And to do that, you've got to be able to surface data and turn it into actionable intelligence wherever and whenever it's most relevant. And so when you look at those three things as objectives for firms, then a couple of things come to the foreground. The first is you've got to be cloud-based because that's the only way that you get the kind of cost efficiencies that you need. The second is, as I said, this idea of modularity, and the third is having a web-based front end. And the web-based front end isn't just about the eye candy, although that clearly is a point. That is the route to data centricity, and you simply aren't at the races unless you can tick all those three boxes. And so the firms, firms like Glue42 and Velox that I work with are seeing, opportunities within the, tier one investment banks, broker dealers that have, all these different stovepipes of creaking old technology that they want to sort of almost lay on their side horizontally. The same firms and tier twos and tier threes that have an investment in third-party ISVs, whether it's Fidessa or FlexTrade, that they're trying to modernize. You've got those vendors themselves that are desperate to try and move from client-server architecture, which is what I grew up on, into something more contemporary. And then the other one that really interests me are the venues, because they've all understood that they can make much more predictable recurring revenues out of data and data services than just matching orders, which obviously then is subject to market conditions and volatility. Now, that's why I've bought IDC, that's why the LSE has bought Refinitiv. The venues have got data everywhere, but they really struggle to find ways to monetize that and to deliver it in a digestible form to their customers. So that's why this stuff for me is so exciting, because it just affects every style of participant in our industry.
Yeah, absolutely, it absolutely does. And I think this is, everything you said there, I think is so relevant to what we've been seeing and hearing over the course of last year, and only been accelerated over the period. And it's been, 12 months of incredible, adoption of technology. You mentioned the cloud there and how embedded that's been, and the acceleration of that over the last year. But there's a lot of opportunities within it, and a lot of complexity that's come up with how companies can sort of win the race within this, which sort of throws an interesting light into the whole low code movement. And John, as the expert in that space, tell us how that fits into this jigsaw.
Yeah, sure. I mean, low code in this context is really just synonymous with just going faster, developing faster, being able to innovate faster, right? I mean, I think when we talk about modernizing, we're talking about fixing issues, right? Fixing things that aren't right within capital markets. And one of them is, it's just so hard to get things done. It's so expensive to get things done. And so, low code as a kind of a broad umbrella of all the things that can help you get things done faster, it's just incredibly relevant. And I think that's why you're seeing, such a, from a year ago where it wasn't even mentioned to now it's coming up everywhere. And that's really just because, as I said, it's supply and demand. There's just so much to be done. The problem is it's so expensive and hard to get things done. That low code is kind of a, one of the things that's really going to help move things forward. And I think it's low code in a capital markets context, that I think is most important.
I think the other thing that I have observed with Velox in particular is, the term low code, and that's a bit like cloud. It's become so ubiquitous, it becomes almost meaningless. And I think it's worth just spending a minute on what low code to Velox means, because I think they have a distinct view on it, which is based on two principles. The first is it's got to be data centric. If you don't join the data up in some way, so you've got one data fabric, it doesn't matter how many clever drag and drop, point and click app builder features you've got, you're just never going to get to the races. And that's something that Velox starts with. And the second, which John educated me on, was that point and click interfaces to build applications are great, but they only get you so far. At some point, you've got to step out of that and actually do some coding. And I mean, I think you shared with me a comment from Microsoft about that, John, that I thought was quite interesting about, the Microsoft approach to low code, I think kind of agrees with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think our approach to low code is, and there's lots of different. Obviously, you're right. I mean, I think one thing to state is low code has become like cloud, right? Which is, it's like, what's that again? Right? It can mean many different things, right? And so I think some low code solutions are actually kind of cross industry. Some of them are used in quite specific ways. Like low code is coming up for AI now. Low code is coming up for for other specializations. And so what we're talking about here is low code that's designed to work within the capital markets and really the kind of sales and trading arena, right? So, and in sales and trading, as Steve said, what's common there is what everybody's trying to do is monetize data. What most of the applications and what most software is trying to do is make it easier for businesses to monetize data. So our we call it data-centric low code is really aimed specifically at that problem. Now, it can be applied elsewhere, but really it's a solution was born within and created within kind of through many years of kind of dealing with this issue. But it's really specifically around helping businesses monetize data faster.
And I think that's a very interesting part of what you've been talking about, because the two things there that you've been discussing is both the sort of reduction of cost in one stage, the prohibitive nature of certain elements of trading technology, and then also the ability to monetize and create and add value through everything as well. So we're talking about increasing value and then also decreasing cost, which has been one of the core elements of the last year. The other side of things that I see an awful lot of conversation about, and one of the drivers for tech adoption has been friction reduction. And if we're putting all of that into a melting pot to say, look, here we're looking for a far greater and far more customized service for people who we're looking to serve as technology within the financial marketplaces. The little bit then of the jigsaw that then comes together is looking at how desktop interop adds in and helps from it there. And this falls into your wheelhouse, Reena. Tell us a little bit about how you enter stage right here.
Yeah, so I mean, we've just been talking about low code and how you can unify data and aggregate data from the back end and bring it to the front. So Steve also mentioned moving more towards a modular architecture. So if you think about it, if you're now in a world where you've got a lot of different mini apps, if you like, just like you have on your mobile, there's got to be a way to bring them together. And that's where
maniacs then. I was like, mini apps.
Mini apps, yeah, all maniacs. There
maniacs.
There's plenty of them too.
Yeah, so if you've got a bunch of micro applications, and if you add in low code, which essentially what you're doing is, like John said, you're creating a new business application of value add to sales and trading. You've got to find a way to bring them together and actually act as one. So the way I see it is that desktop integration, it helps pave the way to platform modernization by enabling newly built applications, such as low code, to share data or pass UI actions to existing applications on the user's desktop. And that could be other web apps or legacy apps. And that simplifies the workflows across the applications. But now that's just workflows. But when you fully utilize a desktop integration platform, what you get is a host. It forms a host to a mixture of web and legacy applications that allows unified workspaces to be built, centralized notifications, allow global searching and more. So the end goal really is to create a single platform user experience. So basically what we're saying is the idea being is that as you incrementally modernize your platform, what you want is your new tech to blend in and work with your old technology. And therefore the gradual shift from old to new is seamless for the end user.
I mean, sort of end user is important, isn't it? Steve, you jump in there.
I was just going to say, Toby, that I think the other thing that's important as well as getting onto that glide path of modernization is getting an ROI really, really quickly. And again, going back to my days at Fidessa, it was a great firm and I loved my time there. But, it took us a long time to deliver anything to our customers. I mean, it would always work and it would be robust, at least most of the time anyway.
Verify that statement is correct.
Me too.
but it took us an age. And what really opened my eyes when I started working with Velox and Glue was that you can deliver, complete, highly usable business functionality to traders in days. And one of the projects that these guys did together, I think we spent longer, negotiating, arguing over the contract,
much longer
than we did actually doing it.
Yeah.
And that was just really, really awesome. And so, I think what's starting to happen is cat markets participants are seeing that actually it doesn't have to be that way. And that is what I find so exciting about these new technologies, is that they can deliver, not just a sort of architectural shift into the right way of doing things, but give you a weekly return on your investment that I certainly for some of the more traditional heritage vendors is just impossible.
And it's the speed and agility that allows that to happen, isn't it, John? I know you've been twitching to get involved there as well, and you come.
Yeah, I think, and just one thing and I think everybody's kind of saying it, but one thing just to highlight is one of the key things is about reuse. And this building on top of, legacy gets a bit of a bad rap, right? And I think one of the things that we've been able to do and this is where, you can kind of bend what low code means. I mean, our low code helps you to reuse and build on top of the things that you have in the enterprise that actually still work pretty well. And I think that's a key thing, because this whole notion of kind of replacing, it's just a bad idea, and it's proven to be very, very hard to do. I saw watched a really interesting documentary on YouTube about I think the Apollo guidance computer, I think, is 60 years old.
Okay.
60th anniversary, and it's basically the piece of software that took them to the moon and then landed them on the moon. And I mean, it was written with basically, very blunt tools, right? There was just no technology around at that time, but it was built, and if you wanted to land on the moon today, I mean, it would still work, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with it just because it's old, right? It still does exactly what it says. Does exactly what it says on the tin. So I think it's always, we find ourselves talking to clients about this a lot, right? Which is that, and Fidessa gets caught up in this as well, right? But just because there are things that you use every day that don't work well, that doesn't mean that just 5% below the surface, you actually have something that's just fine, right? And so I think one thing we've focused on is with our low code solution is being able to make the most of what you've got and augment what you've got.
But I mean, I think it's an interesting analogy, John. But the reason that bit of kit still works is because, at least last time I looked, the moon is still in the same place. Whereas if you look at customer requirements, they're changing every day, every minute. And that's the kind of nub of it, is you want to reuse the bits and the data that you've got, but constantly reassemble them in different ways to meet those changing requirements. So if your Apollo guidance system suddenly says, I've got to go to Mars or Saturn or Alpha Centauri or wherever, then it probably wouldn't be quite so useful.
There we go again.
But no, it's pick fight, so there we are.
It's the classic Grob Butler.
I'm still just stuck on the fact that the moon hasn't moved.
He never said
same orbit, right?
He never said he was an astrologer. So look, this is an interesting part, because we're getting into the crux of this now, and there's actually a question that's just come through which sort of ties into something which I wanted to move into at the moment. This is from Neeraj, who asks, is it possible to share some real world use case examples of that have been solved and implemented for our front office? Well, I'm pleased to say that that's a sort of delightful segue into a question which I wanted to raise, which looks at the sort of the value of value add of utilizing both low code and desktop interop together. You guys have worked together, worked with the STIFO as a use case that I think you're happy to share some information on. So, Reena, let's go over to you. Tell us, if you can answer both those questions together. There's we can kill two birds with one stone there.
Yeah, that's fine. So before we get into the use case, I just wanted to make some general points, and this is to add to what Steve and John were talking about. So if you're using low code and desktop interop together, in my opinion, that for me, the first power of that is that it's a total front to back solution. So as the guys touched on, it maximizes your existing assets, both on the data side and the desktop side, and enables your business to keep moving forward. And then the next thing is agility, which we spoke about. And for me, both of our technologies, they bend with the requirements of the business, not the other way around. So, in the old days, users were limited to the system that they had in front of them and what the system could do. And they used to learn to work around the system. So we all know about the classic workarounds. But now, now you've got applications and workflows that actually work together and the way that you want. So that's a real game changer. And then the last thing to add is, again, we spoke about this before, is the speed of delivery, and later enhanced as well to keep up with changing business needs. So we're talking days, not months. So I think that if you've got an immediate business problem that you want to solve, or if you want to modernize your platform and continually deliver value to the business, then I think this is a great solution. So with all those points in mind, I want to bring up one of our recent use cases. So our most recent venture was with Stifel, a sell-side investment bank, and they actually had an immediate business need that they were looking to solve. So like everyone, Brexit presented them with a problem. And in order to maintain their presence in Europe, they acquired a German bank. Now, they already had 5 different instances of an OMS running, and in this case, Fidessa, that we all know and love. So now by acquiring the German bank, they inherited a 6th instance. So now they've got 6 Fidessas, none of them talking to each other, none of them integrated. So that posed a business problem for them. So anyway, to get ready for Brexit, what they wanted to do is give their UK and European sales traders the ability to see all the order flow, understand where they could cross-sell, and then give them the ability to send out IOIs back through Fidessa. So with Brexit looming, I think they spoke to us literally a few months before Brexit. They wanted to do this quickly. They didn't want a lengthy integration, and this isn't something that Fidessa can do out of the box. So they approached us. And essentially what they had is a data problem, which Velox can solve, and a workflow problem that Glue42 can solve. So that's what attracted them to us. So using Velox, what we did was we extracted and consolidated order data from the Fidessa backends, so from different Fidessas, and we presented them into a web application. And then we leveraged Glue42 to give the sales traders the ability to create IOIs in Fidessa from that new web application. So that enhanced their workflow. And this was delivered in less than 10 days, and that enabled their business goals to be met.
Fantastic, isn't it? And I think it's just absolutely the case of being able to look at these issues that have been created. I know, John, you're sort of at pains to say that legacy isn't necessarily a dirty word here, or enterprise by the same rationale, but it's we're here and seeing opportunities to do and improve things. What's your side of the story on this, John?
And it's same as Reena's, really. I mean, I think we were joined at the hip on this one. I think it was one of those situations, and obviously we have a long relationship with Stifel, and this was the first opportunity to really work with them, and it was just a perfect use case because as Reena said, it was like, and it was just great to see all the bits come into play because they literally had a month, and to get it into production and get it working, and all of the different bits had to come together. Yeah, within a month they were actually using it in production. So it was a really good use case, and everybody walked away very happy.
And just one of the important points to sorry, Steve, after you, no, you go.
Calm down.
It's just so exciting, isn't it?
I think the other point I just want to quickly make is that this isn't about Fidessa. This is about every OMS, whether it's in-house or whether it's max creativity, what have you. And I know that John and Reena's firms have done the same equivalent projects that they've done with Stifel with other implementations, and it's just a question of trying to take these different vertical stovepipes and put this horizontal framework into them which is where the sort of data-centric low code comes in. And then using platforms like Glue42, that's how you then deliver the integration at the desktop. And so, it's not a Fidessa problem that these guys are solving. It's a generic, global problem, whether you've built your OMS yourself or whether you've bought someone else's. Reena, I'll cut up.
You go, Reena.
No, it was just, there were two things. I mean, I wanted to come back to Toby's earlier point about how do you decrease costs? Well, this was a classic case of that, because what happened for Stiefel is that they didn't have to have their sales traders with two OMSs open, essentially. But the other thing was that it enabled business continuity in Europe. So they were still seen as one entity from the outside world. And actually, they ended up hitting a lot more clients by what we gave them. So actually, they got greater client coverage. But the most important thing for me is that we had happy sales traders. So by delivering in this way and modernizing your platform in this way, you've got the business
photos, they were happy. We can prove it.
So you don't often hear that in the same sentence, do you?
But for me, you get the business buy-in early. So if you start delivering in this way, then you've got that buy-in early, and it's really important to convert the users early on.
I think the one thing I was just going to say as well is and it comes back to the Maniac apps that Reena was the micro apps. And it's not really about once the solution is built. And again, to completely overuse the Apple iPhone and App Store analogy, there's a real market out there for kind of point solutions, like micro solutions. I mean, what we did for Stiefel it solved a specific problem. It didn't try to do too much. It's very discrete, and and there's lots of people that can reuse that, right? And it's very similar to how you use the App Store, which is I need an app to just do this little thing for me, and I can just go on, I download it, and I'm up and running. And something like this, I mean, to manage IOIs more effectively, you can get to the point where you just go onto the website, pick your connectors, download, and you're using it in the afternoon. So I think there's something about vendor technology being much more discreet, much smaller, and just solving specific problems rather than these big monolithic $1 million a year 7-year contracts.
And actually, on top of the other thing is that I think is really cool is the idea of vendors, the next gen of vendors like Velox and Glue42 are completely happy working together, cohabiting to solve a client problem. There's no, oh, that's my client, I own it. And I think that really talks to the future of where this industry is going, of sort of bringing the sort of API economy that we see in our everyday lives into capital markets. And I think one of the things that I really like that the Glue42 guys have done that also sets them apart is create these discrete appliances so that desktop integration, interop, whatever you want to call it, is whoopee-doo, it's fantastic. It's a C-level decision that's made. Then there's a 3-year program and a rollout and everything else, and everyone gets tremendously excited, in the CIO's office. But it means nothing to the guys actually working day to day. And so by taking the sort of appliance route that Glue42 went down, it's not only delivering, as Reena says, that immediate benefit, but it's also getting you on the sort of nursery slopes of all this new technology, so you can start to get comfy with it. And then as you get more proficient, you can start skiing off piste with the whole thing. And it's really, really cool that way.
And that's exactly what happened with Stiefel. So they've already come back to us, and we're on to the next part of the slope, if you like, with more requirements around order management and IOI management, Bloomberg integration. And so it's sort of developing in that way, incremental modernization.
So we're getting close to the après ski is what we're saying. Staying on this case, there's another couple of questions that have just come in, so asking for a little bit more detail about who actually performed the development work, and more specifically, what was the resource profile of the team that did the work? Is that something you guys can share?
Velox and Glue did the development work on this one, and that was just because that was just the profile of the client. So the client, ordinarily the client would have done the development work on this one, but they didn't have developers at hand, so we did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the general idea. I mean, our low code is low code for developers. It's not point and click for for anybody to use. It is actually aimed at developers. Our low code requires a Java skill set, but it doesn't require. But it does simplify and accelerate the process. So we do find that we're able to make less experienced developers much more productive with it.
Superb. Okay. It's great to see some questions coming in, and please do keep them coming. I'll dip into them, but I also have some time at the end to answer a few more. There's another couple which we'll come to in a second as well. Just you mentioned there that this is a business that was known to you both, that came to you with an issue that you solved. There's a massive opportunity in this area, and it isn't just related to one specific area. Steve, you started off by talking about who and where and all the various movements from LSEG to Refinitiv and everyone else in between who have sort of seen this ongoing trend. What sort of customers are being approached about this opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I think to some extent I've answered that a little bit in what I said earlier, but the thing that has been really interesting, again, as a kind of observer in all of this, is we saw how in the summer of last year, businesses just went into pandemic management mode, outsourcing all their workforces, everything else. And one of the really interesting byproducts of that is everyone's gotten used to working remotely, working with one screen, HTML5 applications, and even when people go back to a trading floor, which I'm sure they will, they won't go back to the old way of working. And so I think what I'm seeing anyway is an acceleration in demand across the board for saying, actually, I can work with the same level of fluency that I do in my everyday world, just having one browser that navigates me through everything that I want to do, from the TV I want to watch through to my shopping on Ocado or Amazon or whatever it is all done in, as if it were one workspace. And that idea of, that's interconnectedness is applies across the board. And I think, I've seen in, just 12 months, an acceleration in demand for these types of systems. And, I only see that continuing.
Absolutely. And Reena and John, have you got additional parts there about where you see this reaching?
As Steve mentioned, it's this interconnectedness. It's all about collaboration now between different vendors, clients building applications. Essentially what we're doing is putting the clients back in control of their technology, and we're taking what we see on the mobile to the desktop and advancing it.
And in fact, just on that point, what I think is really interesting is as well as attitudes changing in banks and buy sides, that's going to happen with the incumbent tech vendors too, because the idea that they can own clients exclusively for 5 years is just not going to happen in the future, and there's increasingly a pushback to that, and I think that's it's going to be very interesting how those firms adapt to these changes. How do they maintain their relevance in a world where the cat's out the bag now, and so suddenly there's I think just come back to your question, Ted, one of the biggest sources of new inquiries that we're seeing is from tech vendors saying, what, if you can help me take my good, robust, resilient, but 15-year-old architecture and turn it in a year into something that's web-based, cloud cloud delivered, then yes, please, because then suddenly I'm part of the new cool gang.
And this goes back to what we've seen on the institutional side, isn't it? With the sort of threat of fintech coming in there to sort of disrupt the industry very quickly. The most forward thinking of the investment banks adopted and brought the sort of disruptive community into the fold. And I think if you look at this again, there's a massive opportunity for enterprise vendors to really look at this and say, right, how can we look at this with our customers and provide them the best of breed service that allows us to be that much more nimble, so it doesn't become irrelevant. And I think that's a really interesting upside to all of this as well. With all of this comes challenge as well. John, talk to us about some of the challenges that they're going to need to be addressed at the moment.
I think I don't know if there's anything specific to do with desktop interop and low code. I would say that the issue is and always is, that's not the way I've always done it, and that's not the way, wasn't built here kind of thing, right? Which is, I think that as a community of engineers and technologists that have worked in capital markets, I think we've kind of all come from a world where we used to build everything ourselves. I've kind of flipped sides now. And so I can actually see it from both points of view. And I think both points of view made sense at the time that they were prevalent. So I think it's really just shifting mindsets. So I think it's people being open to new way of doing things and not being, not dismissing a new way of doing something just because they don't understand it, right? And we found, just to talk from our own personal experience at Velox, because our full stack solution is a different way of developing than the way it's been done in the past. It takes a long time, and we have to go through POCs, hands-on POCs with clients for them to really be able to see. Actually, right, we do understand now why you're doing it this way, and we do understand that it's better. So I think that's really the biggest challenge, right? Which is about getting people to embrace new ideas, and at some point the dial will shift, right, and we'll get the momentum.
It's the classic case, isn't it, of adoption in any of these sort of areas, Steve?
Yeah, I probably developing on from that. Another thought in there, which is that, and John and I were talking about this the other night with his tech founder, that these new technologies, it's not like Alka-Seltzer where you drop them in water and suddenly all your problems go away and you start to feel better. And the point about what these guys are doing is it's self-empowerment.
Says a lot about your lot down there, Steve.
I was just about to say, for those of us that were born after 1950, what Steve means.
And if you're going to give people the tools to empower themselves to solve their problems in double quick time with really elegant solutions, they've got to seize that. And in some cases, I think there's a tendency where the old style of vendor relationship is, I sit back, go into the operation, I'll wake up and suddenly I'll my appendix is removed or whatever. That's great. That's not what this is about. It's a whole new paradigm of, here's a bunch of really creative tools that you and your traders and your quants can go and solve their problems themselves in super quick time. Getting them to feel that, we're sort of giving them the keys to the car. And sometimes that's the biggest struggle is, oh, you mean you're not going to do it all for me? No, because you can do it yourself. And when you can do it yourself, as we've all seen with our online lives, then shopping and everything else is massively easy. Yeah,
that adoption curve, I think, is an interesting thing. Reena, are you seeing sort of similar stories?
Yeah. So, John mentioned this, but a shift in mindset. Now, that's definitely one of the challenges. And I think that applies to clients and vendors. So clients building their own applications and vendors as well. Because in the old days, we've all come from, working with monolithic applications and one application doing everything. But now in the new world, an application it's not an island, and we're no longer building applications in silos. So we need to see our apps as part of an overall platform or set of workflows. So I think when modernizing apps, I think one of the first things that you have to look at is what you actually want your application to be, and where it starts and where it ends. And I think that's going to be quite key, because, for example, would you put analytics in an OMS these days? Probably not. You'd probably partner with an application, with an analytics app. So I think the shift in mindset is important, and that brings me on to the old traditional debate around build versus buy. And I think we've proved that build and buy can now coexist, and they have to, particularly in this world of maniac apps or micro apps.
We're onto something, Reena.
And I think that's where, so coming back to what Steve said about vendors maintaining relevance, I think their biggest challenge definitely is how do they maintain their relevance in the marketplace, and how do they continue to be a first-class citizen on the desktop? So again, they need to understand they're one part of a platform and part of a set of workflows, and they need to be more open and agile, producing APIs and embracing collaboration. Collaboration
absolutely seems to be the future of everything as well. And we'll move on to the future in a second, but just going back a step to the use case you guys have just spoken about. If you're there and you're building the guidelines for what successful implementations look like here, Reena, tell us a little bit about some of the things you've picked out and you can particularly focus on with that.
Yeah, so I think, again, it depends whether you're solving a specific business problem or you're looking to modernize your entire platform. And I think there's different success criteria in both. So if we look at what John and I did for Stiefel, so what Glue and Velox did, and this sounds really obvious, but understanding the business requirements and the actual problem is really important, because often users want to present you with a solution and they don't actually want to explain to you what the what and the why is. So they just want to say, hey, I want to see trade history over there or whatever it is. So it's really important to understand the business requirements and the actual problem. Good planning and tight collaboration, always key. Like John said, we were joined at the hip for the Stiefel implementation. Because we did the actual development, so, because there were two vendors involved, I think what happens with us is that one of us usually leads a project. And in this case, it was Glue42. But for us, it creates a seamless customer experience. So the customer really has one single point of contact, and it makes everything a whole lot easier. So that's with an immediate business need. And then if you're looking at modernizing the whole platform, then there's a lot more stuff that comes into play. But I think if you've got that view and that vision of hey, I want to modernize my whole platform, then before you start anything, you've got to know what that long-term vision is and define it. And then, some of the normal stuff comes into play, like doing a discovery phase up front. So I call it a 360-degree evaluation from a tech perspective and a business perspective. So understanding the business's challenges, investing in the latest technology. So Steve mentioned cloud adoption and web-based architecture, focusing on workflows and not applications. So having your dev teams that were probably previously quite siloed, working together, agreeing on common design standards, implementation, governance, that sort of thing. Again, good planning, a phased approach is always best. And the key point that I want to raise here is strong collaboration between the business and technology. It's so important to get that business buy-in early and finding those desk champions. Because if you can continually deliver value to the business throughout your modernization program, then you're going to succeed.
Winning those hearts and minds, I think, has always been the sort of fundamental part of getting this sort of things right. And John, from your side, you've seen exactly the same thing, I presume.
Yeah, I think Reena covered it perfectly. Actually, I think the broader total platform modernization, obviously slightly different. But for this particular example that with Stiefel, I think from a client success perspective, it's about having a specific problem that you need to solve, right? And just and knowing and understanding what that is, and being able to articulate and having thought through exactly, which is how it worked with Steve. They knew exactly what they needed, they knew exactly why they needed it, and they knew exactly when they needed it, right? And it just everything just was aligned. And you can waste a lot of time where clients think they know what it is that they need, but when you actually get into it and when you're signing, you're in the middle of the project, it actually turns out that it's really not quite so clear, and that's nobody wins in that type of a situation.
Yeah. I intimated before that we sort of talked to the future, and a lot of this has been already doing that. And in a couple of minutes, we'll move on to a couple of great questions that have come in as well. But let's look at the future and what that looks like in this space. Steve, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in some senses that future is here. And it's about how quickly our industry moves to adopt this stuff. And I think what's going to be really apparent is as more and more use cases come out that there is a new, better way of doing things, then that's only going to accelerate and snowball. And I've seen the world of sort of desktop integration, interop emerge, over the last 5 years, and the sort of low code movement emerge, perhaps over a shorter time. And now coming together is incredibly powerful, and I think that's got a long, long way to go. And the big realization is, the big aha moment is when we were all building systems back in our Fidessa days or whatever we were doing, we were absolutely obsessed with functionality. And suddenly you say, oh, what about the data? Oh, well, this data's over here, this data's over here, this data's over here. And that's what's caused the problem. And suddenly if you flip your thinking and say, yeah, sure, functionality is important, but the data has to come first. And if I can get that in a format that I can negate the fact that it's actually in different systems, which is what Velox is doing, then you open up a whole new world of possibilities, and I think that's got a long way to go.
Absolutely agree. Anything else from you, Reena, with regards to what the future may hold?
For me, it's all about simplification, automation, and collaboration. And as Steve said, it's with data playing a central role. So I think applications need to become more flexible and open, with APIs becoming the norm.
Yeah.
And any technology that takes away the complexity of trading in today's markets, like bringing data to the forefront in a contextual way, simplifying and automating workflows, creating that unified platform and user experience, and delivering change at speed. All of this as a whole, enabling things like personalized client experiences, deeper market insights for making better trading decisions and better execution outcomes, will succeed. So I think that's where we're moving, and I call it platformification. So there you go.
I like that. We'll trademark that straight away. But I agree, and I think that's the same across any industry, isn't it? The sort of efficiency gains and productivity gains that we're talking about is exactly what this can do and achieve. John, let's move to you before we move to the questions. Anything you'd add to the future in space?
Yeah, I think obviously when you're talking about the future, it's always a question of how far out. But I think what we'd like to see is that traditional roles of vendor and client dissolve and things start to merge, and and there's less of a boundary, and there's more collaboration, and it's more fluid. I think we want to see more of multiple vendors being able to come together to solve specific problems in the best possible way for clients, and everybody being comfortable with doing that. And that takes both the vendors to want to work together, but then also clients to be open-minded about the fact that I know it seems simpler if it's just one vendor, but actually the best solution for me may be, using three or four that know how to work together. But then also I think the role of, the division between user and developer, I think also starts to blur. And I think, one of the goals of low code is to because I think the users are getting a lot more technical. I think,
definitely.
Everybody's getting, especially the next generation of people coming through, everybody can write some code. I think that, especially in our industry where agility and ability to react is always going to be on the forefront, I think, the more power that we can put in the hands of the users, the better off they'll be. And it creates this what's happened. One of the problems we've had is that vendors have been able to kind of keep clients somewhat captive, right? And because the clients just become so dependent on vendors making changes. And I think kind of when clients are able to make their own changes more easily, I think that's really going to create a lot more kind of positive competition within the industry that will do everybody some good.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move to questions. Thanks for that, guys. We've got one in here from Lee Griggs, who can definitely come again because he starts with good discussion. So thank you for that. Quick one to explain more about the ongoing maintenance benefits with low-code solutions. A lot is rightly made re speed of deployment, ROI, time to revenue, etc. But the huge savings on both cost and reduced operational risk of a much smaller code base is material. Comments/examples. John, do you want to grab that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, I think we, just from talking about myself, I mean, we talk about efficiency. We have a tendency to lead with the coding bit, and low code. That's one of the reasons why I hate actually some aspects of the word low code, because and have a tendency to always try to kind of not say low code, say kind of efficiency or developer efficiency, right? Making development faster, because it's not just about the coding. Right. In fact, for those people that have been, for all of us, right, that have been involved in the software development lifecycle, you actually spend, a lot less time in the coding bit than you do in all the other bits: testing, supporting, releasing. And so, actually, what we mean by low code is as I said, developer, and it's always low code platform. It's the platform bit that actually delivers just as much of the accelerant as the coding bit, because that it basically makes it a lot easier to deploy applications. It makes it a lot easier to run applications. It makes it a lot easier to test and to monitor and support applications. So I think it's a great question. I think Lee, thank you for bringing it up, because I think that is one of the downsides of low code as a phrase. Everybody just seems, you zero in on the fact, I'm just going to be coding less. Well, actually, the bigger part of the problem is not the coding bit. It's everything else that goes into the software development lifecycle.
There's a question or two questions that have come in, and they're sort of roughly similar. So I'm going to run both of them, and actually I think they're quite interesting. We've sort of touched on them a little bit so far. Daryl poses, have you had any pushback from vendors that are nervous about interoperability with other vendors? I've got one from Scott here saying, how will existing incumbent vendors react to all of this? Steve, that's an interesting one to throw your way. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's so yes, it's the short answer, and this is where it depends upon how visionary these firms are, because and I remember in my days at Fidessa, we'd come across exciting tech, and we'd end up saying, we can build it ourselves, we can do this, we can do that, and the sort of default position was always, no, we don't want to let anyone else contaminate our clients with their products. But actually, if you just take a step back, if you can make your product more valuable to your customer without having to do any work yourself, then actually the chances of them renewing and having a happy long-term relationship with you are extended out into the future. So I think as long as you don't get too short-termist, then it really isn't a problem. In fact, it's a huge advantage, because if you can, as a vendor, do less work and have happier customers, why don't you want them?
Yeah, which I think is absolutely the right way to look at that, and again, comes back to that efficiency and productivity piece that drives all of this conversation all the way through. We've got time for one final piece to come in, and it's obviously from a fan of the series, who has said that they saw the event with Luxoft the other day, which I think Glue42 were running. So what role does systems integrators like Luxoft play in all of this? And I'll push that to you, Reena, if you could.
Great question. Thank you. So for me, SIs, they play a number of roles for us. I think the most obvious one is that SIs are helping us to extend our outreach of Glue42 by promoting us to their client bases and, of course, helping us implement Glue42. But I think for me, most importantly, is the fact that I see them as our eyes and ears on the ground. They're already embedded in a client's organization, so they can understand their challenges firsthand and provide opportunities not just to bring us in, but also ways that we can improve our product. And then the final thing, I think, for me around SIs is that they're actually SMEs in certain vendor products and or business areas. So again, for us, that's great because they offer their expertise, and we need that expertise to expand into different areas. So, for example, Toby, I think you mentioned Luxoft there. They have expertise in Calypso, and they understand the back office really well. So that's an area that we're exploring together.
I think that again comes down to that whole concept of collaboration, which is
exactly
the bond of everything we're talking about here. And as if we look at trends over the course of it, and I've written a piece that'll be coming out very soon about this. If there's one thing I think that the pandemic, the last 12 months, has done to the whole technology industry, it's really cement that sort of need and that opportunity and the sort of availability of real solutions through collaboration and putting these things together and saying that you aren't alone. And this doesn't have to be one hero in the story. It's about putting people together to really drive businesses further forward. So I knew I was looking forward to this conversation for a reason. It's been absolutely brilliant. We've had so much decent content, thought, insight from all of you in this, and it's been an absolute honour and pleasure to be involved as the bystander to the brilliance that's going on around me. So, to finish this off, it's a thank you to everyone who's come in and listened to this today for the great questions that have been posed. It is a huge thank you to both Velox and Glue42 who have put this together, and of course Mr. Steve Grob and Vision 57 for making his vision come true with this whole piece as well. So absolute honour for me to have been involved in it. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for coming along, and thanks to every one of you for getting involved. Steve, John, Reena, thank you so much. Really enjoyed it.
Toby.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.